Significant player in the global oil industry, Nigeria has for years struggled at home. While citizens contend with insufficient products and queues constantly, the government confronts several issues such as corruption and mismanagement, infrastructure deficit, security challenges, amongst others. Recently, issues in the sector came to a face-off between a private refinery, Dangote Refinery, and government agencies, with accusations that private refineries were being starved of crude oil by the federal government.
What is in the public space?
At the Federal Executive Council meeting, a memo is considered to address some of these challenges in the sector.
That's effective if immediately that NNPC gets engaged with local refineries, and we are starting that with Dangote Refinery, that the sales of crude oil to Dangote Refinery be denominated in Naira, and also the sales of refined product from Dangote Refinery to marketer and distributors also should be conducted in Naira.
Some of the benefits of the initiative include reduced trade finance cost with annual savings of $79 million, stabilized petroleum product prices, reduced transportation costs, food price inflation, and positively impacting interest rates.
Today, you may be aware that we spend roughly 30 to 40% of our foreign exchange today on importation of PMS that we consume. And in monetary term, monthly, we spend roughly $660 million in this exercise. And if you annualize that, that one will give us $7.92 billion pressure that we have. With this approval today through FEC, led by Mr. President, this has reduced by minimum of 90%.
The council also set up a settlement bank as a go-between.
As a pilot, the council has approved that a settlement bank, which in this instance is Afri-Exim, should be the lead arranger. That will be the settlement bank, at least today, between NNPC and Dangote Refinery.
This strategy is expected to eliminate government control and drive independence of the market. It also aims to eliminate government intervention in the management of domestic petroleum prices, allowing for greater market predictability and stability. From the Presidential Villa, Lanre Lasisi, Channels Television News.
And indeed, that's where the conversation will start off, from that directive from the president to have Nigeria's crude sold to Dangote refineries and others in the Naira denomination. That's a conversation we'll be having today. And to help us get into this, we have Prince David Iweta, who's the National Vice President of NACCIMA, Patron Sapele Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Thank you for joining us here.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And joining us virtually is Dr. Ayodele Oni, who is an energy law and policy professional, joins us virtually. Dr. Oni, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
Let's start out with you. For instance, you are an energy law and policy professional. So tell us, this directive, what do you think the effect will be on the energy space?
Okay, I think what it does is that it provides energy security to a large extent, because it then ensures that Dangote can buy crude and refine locally and sell locally, and cuts off, and other refineries too, and cuts off the logistics nightmare we've had with importation, and also helps us save 30.6% in 2022 was what we spent of our forex spend went on procuring petroleum products. So for me, it's energy security. It's, of course, it's a policy trade-off, to be honest, because government had a choice of generating more forex or foreign exchange or foreign currency, and if it's sold to Dangote in USD, and it then meant that you would have more money in the federation account, generally speaking. However, the trade-off is to ensure that the naira strengthens. There's more transactions, huge transactions in the trade-off is because anyway, we may still have had to use that money, the forex, and be at a deficit. So it looks generally like a good thing.
Okay, so the lifeline, some people have said the president has thrown out the lifeline to the Dangote refinery. You're saying that that lifeline is not necessarily to Dangote refinery alone, but to the economy generally.
Yes, I'm not sure I even like the term lifeline because he's a businessman who's invested and should expect returns. I think it's a lifeline to Nigerians, generally speaking. Of course, the devil is in the detail of implementation, but as it is, the policy, generally speaking, appears to be a good thing, appears to, of course, it's a trade-off to forex in the federation account, not just to the federal government. So I guess states would have their own views, so to speak. But it's a good thing that those forex challenges that go to importation can substantially reduce. And besides, as a lawyer, I mustn't forget to mention, I think it's section 109, subsection 4 of the PIA, that speaks to a domestic crude supply obligation. And of course, there are rules around negotiation and that you can pay in Naira or USD, depending on what parties, that's the lessee who is selling the crude and the refiner agree. You know, a Dangote, for example, an NNPC being the lessee and a Dangote, what they agree. So if they agree to pay to trade in Naira, so be it, and it does make sense. You know, it helps us. It ensures that we have some measure of stability and guarantees to a reasonable extent security of energy supply. Petroleum products, that's it. That is.
Prince Waiter, in terms of, I mean, the National Association of Chambers of Commerce and Industry, Commerce and Mines and all of that, well, in looking at this whole picture, I do know that there's been some level of agitations in the commerce, in the industry, as in how do we move forward from here? At that time, we're hearing we can't get, we're getting, we're importing, we're not importing. But now this is coming. He has said it's not just a lifeline to Dangote, it's a lifeline to the economy. But from your perspective?
Yes, I want to say that selling of crude oil in Naira to Nigeria refinery is not a plus to the Nigerian economy. Because 0 plus 0 is equals to 0. 0 times 0 is equals to 0. And 0 divided by 0 is equals to 0. Now, I tell you this. If any refinery before now buying crude oil in dollars, it is a slap on NNPC, and it is lack of patriotism to Nigeria not having faith in their own currency. Because we are not in a dollar economy. Nigeria has a national currency called the Naira, which we ought to, from the beginning, sell crude to local refineries in Nigerian Naira. So we could not and we should not be dollarizing the economy of Nigeria. Nigeria is not wired to be spending dollar but Naira. So for every bit of it, it is faulty from the genesis selling petroleum crude to Nigerian refinery in dollars. Again, Dangote, whether you sell crude to Dangote in Naira or in dollar, it doesn't change anything. Dangote refinery is wired to trade, it's registered to trade in dollars, whether import or export, because it is a free trade zone. It doesn't have Nigeria, it is its own trading territory. It's not in the Nigerian trading custom territory. A free trade zone or export processing zone is supposed to buy in dollars, export 75% of its product outside the shores of Nigeria. And whatever Dangote sell or export into Nigeria is by export. And Nigeria would buy in dollars. And Nigeria should sell to Dangote in dollars, because all the plant and machinery that is exported or imported into a zone does not pay duty. So if you are now making a refinery that is not enjoying export processing zone status, so now begin to compete with a man who didn't pay duty on his plant and machinery, and a man who paid duty on his plant and machinery, somebody is taking advantage over the other. Therefore, if you say today, I spent 2.5 billion naira in importing my equipment, and I paid 1 billion as duty, I'm having 3.5 as my overhead. But a man spent 2 billion and didn't pay duty, and you're now giving the two of them to become on a plane, same plane, to pay and enjoy the same incentive. There is a minus. And these are some of the things that are making foreign investors shy away from Nigeria, because at some point there are overprotectionism for certain individuals and their operations. Therefore, foreign investors will say, hey, if I come into Nigerian territory before 1 year or 2 or 3, the policy would change and I will lose my investment. Therefore, foreign investors are only willing to come into Nigeria because they know their investment will not be protected, so they only come by portfolio investment.
Christian, wait, let me just come in here. When Dr. O'Neill was speaking, he quoted a portion of the PIA that talked about the currency of trade. It says, if the two agree on the currency of trade. So though the president has given the directive right now that they be sold in Naira to Dangote and other upcoming refineries, there is still that part of the law that talks about what is the agreement between the two parties. Do they agree to buy or sell in dollars or in Naira? That's what the PIA says.
Good. Now, if you sell petrol in dollars, you are going to sell at the prevailing exchange rate of the Naira at the day of the transaction. So what difference does it make? And now you have brought in the Afri-Exim Bank to play the dividing role or the settlement role. There is what is called Pan-African Payment and Settlement System, PAPS, which was energized during the African Continental Free Trade Area, whereby countries within the African continent would trade and settle themselves in their local currency. That is the role that was designed for that purpose. But this is a trade within a country, okay? And besides, and like I said, Dangote is operating in a different territory. He's not operating in the Nigerian custom territory where he ought to play in Naira economy. And besides that, Nigeria needs the dollars to pay for non-oil products. And if you now say this, the advantage it is, whether dollar or Naira, to Dangote refinery, is that the crude oil that NNPC used to do by way of swap of exporting to a refinery offshore and then refine it and bring back to Nigeria, that is the only thing Nigeria is going to gain in selling to Dangote refinery, not because he's selling to Dangote in Naira or in dollar. Naira and dollar, they have a way of settling themselves because it's within the same Central Bank of Nigeria payment. If I have a credit of $100 million in my account because I exported refined product to you and you exported to me $100 million worth of crude oil, it balances off. So we shouldn't begin to use grammar or policies or rhetorics to confuse the common Nigerian.
Well, I want to be able to get Dr. Oni's views on that. Dr. Oni, if you can hear us, what do you make of this assertion from him?
Okay,
It does seem a little confusing.
He's made valid points. However, you need to understand that laws are made for men and not the other way around. It's stated very clearly, and I'm aware of the Nigeria Export Processing Zones Act. I am aware of regulations made pursuant to same. His legislation relating to taxes, rates, and all of those forex do not necessarily apply. But nothing says that you cannot decide your currency of trade. Recall, sir, that you do not pay certain taxes, but at the point of bringing it in from the free zone to the customs territory, those things then become applicable. You can actually have a situation where you make yourself bound. One, two, sir, you recall that under the NEBSA Act, and if you use the rules of interpretation, only legislation that is expressly excluded are excluded. The PIA, for example, cannot be excluded in the free trade, in the free zone, right? So to the extent that the PIA gives that room, we will be able to play. He's made a valid point around settlement, a valid point around you will be buying it at what the USD Naira value is. Those are correct. And recall what I said from the beginning. It's a policy choice. Now, you decide whether you want more forex, which you may then have to subsequently use in either buying crude or petroleum products, or you want to the extent that you can, strengthen your currency or have more volumes of Naira transactions.
Okay, Dr.
Well,
before you continue, I want you to be able to take a look at some of the benefits that they gave to us yesterday from that Federal Executive Council meeting about why this is important for the country. Reduction in foreign exchange pressure, a reduced trade finance costs with annual savings of $79 million, stabilized petroleum product pricing, stable petroleum price with lower transportation costs, which is another thing they said. And they said it was going to eliminate government control and drive independence of the markets because it's eliminating government intervention in the management of domestic petroleum prices. And then it's subject to the settlement bank, that's Afrexim. These benefits that they have given to us as, you know, what we're going to derive as a result of this policy from the government, are these things that we can enjoy as Nigerians? How does it impact us, and what's the time frame for this impact?
Okay, I think some of those will impact, but I do not believe that all of it would necessarily be the case. We seem to be very excited when policy decisions are made or policy choices. But for every policy choice, there are also downsides, right? So stability of the currency, ensuring that there's energy security, some of that will be the case. And some will not necessarily be in the immediate. And depending on how this policy is implemented, we need more information, to be honest. What are the guidelines? What's the process? Do you suspend fluctuation in the currency? How do you do settlement? All of those are important issues that need to be dealt with. Recall I said from the beginning that the devil is in the detail of implementation. Policies aren't a problem in this part of the world, and we usually have very brilliant policies. It's how they are implemented. It's whether there is corruption, is whether we actually do what we state we will do within the ambits of the law. So the law does allow some of what the government is seeking to do. It's whether it will be properly implemented. If properly implemented, we will get some of those benefits. But I doubt that it's as grandiose or as absolutely advantageous as it sounded. But there are definitely benefits around ensuring that government reduces its expenditure for forex, right, in crude, you know, because Dangote would definitely have to source for forex, and it then places some pressure on the Naira. That, I believe, would reduce. And energy of security of energy.
Priscilla is laughing. Priscilla is laughing at that thought. What are you thinking? Because, you know, when we heard all of this, we're thinking, okay, look at all the benefits that they're reading out for us. You know, you don't think these are things that can happen? Because I heard you chuckle just a few minutes ago.
Good. Now, when there is an already confused situation, today petrol, PMS, is not sold at uniform prices across the states in Nigeria. And now, what is it NNPC can pointedly say this is the price of petrol in Abuja, in Lagos, in Calabar, in Sokoto per liter? Gone are the days of Petroleum Equalization Management Board, where there is a bridge to support the price differential of what is sold in Lagos and what is sold in far Sokoto. You have opened the trade for everybody. And therefore, when we're in the same economy, some people are buying products higher than others. So now, if today you want to say this is the pump price, with this intervention, what would now be the price? Because all of these things should cascade to a figure that the ordinary man can see at the pump price. It is not sufficient to roll out. It's sufficient to roll out several benefits, which confuses me as an ordinary businessman. All I know is naira and kobo. Look, we can speak grammar when we want to speak grammar to confuse people, but reduce it. What will now be with effect from this action? The pump price will be in Lagos, in Calabar, in Sokoto, in Adamawa.
What would have been a better policy in your view?
No, in my view, the market is so long confused. In the sense that today you say you have removed diesel from control and it's deregulated. Okay? Are you now deregulating PMS? Because they now say it's not going to leave the hand of NNPC to the private operators to now control. And when you control that, there is going to be a gap between the locally refined petroleum product, which must be covered up by importation. Otherwise, lack of availability, lack of product availability will cause another price, increase, which you do not control because it's supply and demand that determine the price. So the issue here is the refineries in Nigeria are not enough. And the issue that have destroyed the country petroleum price for many years ago is because of this subsidy. All the oil majors that explore oil in Nigeria that shares quota of export between NNPC and the likes of Mobil, Total, and all of that, they all have refineries. All the crude oil that they take out of Nigeria do not they don't sell it, they take it to their own refinery to refine. And if Nigeria, during what happened during the military era of indigenization decree, if the government says, yes, though you are our partner, our country is in a bad situation, all the petroleum product that we refine here, we have passed a policy that it must be refined in Nigeria, as it was during the indigenization decree. When that happened, they have no choice but to come in here. And if they don't come here, they will only sell their shares. And there are players that are ready to buy those shares and set their refinery in Nigeria so that all that we produce as crude is refined locally. And the excess alone we can export. This had been one reason why most oil majors have shied away from the Nigerian refinery industry.
I mean, we've been talking a lot about Aliko Dangote in the past few weeks and this situation with the federal government. Does this in any way fix that impasse, so to speak?
It does not fix it. It will not fix it. And it cannot fix it. Take it 1 month, 2 months. If it comes by way of immediate palliative, by the next 2 months, it will tilt to where it was before the policy began.
That's actually pretty discouraging.
Dr. Oni, let's get back a bit to the Petroleum Industry Act and what it says about all of this, how this is supposed to play out. That law, when it came into being, was supposed to create an atmosphere where the petroleum industry, the energy sector in Nigeria, focused particularly on the petroleum industry, would sort of like open up to the investors and those who are willing to play in that field as assured of a law backing their actions and such that the back and forth is not there. Because, I mean, Prince Iweta has talked about the seeming confusion that has been in existence for quite a while. One would have thought that the PIA would have turned all of that around.
Okay, so you can have laws, and I always say Nigeria has some of the best laws. The problem usually is implementation and whether we have the political will to implement properly. I think the PIA has done a good job. If you look at section 109, 317, 318, you see provisions around whether we should still be importing petroleum products, who can import, under what circumstances, the NNPC being supplier of last resort, and issues around a crude supply obligation. Most countries have done it or are doing it, whether it's Egypt, whether it's Canada. You find out that countries have at one time or the other insisted that a volume of production is reserved for local sale. And I agree with Prince Iweta around pricing, at least that point. It's not necessarily the case that the prices will go down or substantially. Maybe you remove logistics cost of importation. Other than that, if you want, because crude is an international commodity, so unless government wants to continue to give subsidy, even Dangote would sell at what the Naira equivalent of the international crude oil price is, or will buy, rather, at what that price is, unless government wants to give a subsidy or some discount. And there are debates about a 27% discount or so. Other than that point, it will be the same price because he will refine, add value, and then sell. He has to make a margin. He's invested, like he did say. He's invested billions of USD. So he needs to recover that sum. So it will not necessarily reduce prices, but I think it can improve energy security of energy supply, provided the NNPC does what it should do. Provided you have crude available. Remember, there's that issue around forward sale arrangements, and that a lot of our crude has been tied down in long-term or mid to long-term contracts. So I have said the devil is in the detail of implementation. Sounds quite reasonable, sounds like something that may work, but in reality, will it work? Implementation, political will, and ensuring that corruption doesn't take over the process. If all of these are not in place, it may well be one of the brilliant policies that do not see the right results. So that's my own view. But with respect to the law is clear. It's whether we are implementing it the way we should around refinery licenses, whether we can import, circumstances where we can import, pricing, negotiation. And it's supposed to be, like you said, negotiation between both parties. The government cannot force any crude lessee to sell at a particular price or at Naira or USD. You know, you can encourage, you can provide incentives, but it says it's a negotiation, willing buyer, willing seller, as to what the currency of exchange should be. So the PIA hasn't done a great job. It's implementation and whether there's a political will over time, whether there's been.
You know, one would have thought, staying with the PIA there, I'll come back to Prince Iweta to weigh in on this briefly, but Dr. Oni, the regulator is supposed to be NMDPRA, and that's for the downstream, and then there's another regulator for the upstream, which means the conversations that government is having with the NNPCL, should they be with the NNPCL or with the regulator of that industry based on the law?
Okay, the interesting point is you'd have to appreciate that the NNPCL is owned by the government. And directly or indirectly, it also influences its board of directors. When the PIA says that willing buyer, willing seller, in fact, the regulator had issued guidelines around this conversation. supposed to be independent. Yes, Minister of Power makes policy decisions generally, and the regulator then implements. So you can make your own policies. But with respect to enterprise, the board of directors and the ownership of the NNPC should make that call. And it appears they've made the call to sell in Naira. Government is just speaking on behalf of the NNPC for now, as long as they continue to direct the board and own its shares. Okay. So it's the enterprise, and so it's not necessarily wrong.
So let's bring it down from enterprise to the commerce part of it. Prince Waiter. Now, I asked those questions so that he clarifies on the legal side and the practicality of it all. But let's come down to the business side of it. In all of these things, how is it working out for both the petroleum industry players that are part of your organization and then the Nigerian people, the Nigerian economy?
Well, like I had said, the petroleum operators have several segments. There are those who are in the offshore, there are those who are onshore, there are those who are downstream. So the whole thing is so confusing, it's embedded in confusion. At times, this man will cross his line and go to another man's line, and this policy is conflicting with another policy. So all of this need to be reduced to a common level of understanding that should not go above the summary of the size of an envelope. Today, you put in policy, there were times that they came, local content. All of that will drag, they will bring in another confusion. So what we are saying here is this. What is it that the pump price today, the reason for the sudden rise in the price of every commodity is the upward movement of price of petrol. If the price of petrol had remained the way it was, this inflation would not have arisen. And the biggest trouble is the dollar. Because Nigeria now spend dollar within our economy, not Naira. The quantum of dollar that is in circulation within Nigeria physically is more than what is in the owner of the currency, United States. But here, we have dollars stuck in politician houses. At Christmas, instead of giving Naira or cow, is dollar they put in envelope to pacify or show thank you to those who have supported political activity over the period. So what I'm saying is that there should be outright ban. There should be a de-emphasis on the Nigerian use of the dollar in our economy. It's a crime. When we were growing up, traveling abroad, we have what is called Thomas Cook. Thomas Cook is a medium of buying traveler's check. And before you access traveler's check, the operator or whoever is organizing your trip will apply to the central bank with your passport and the number of the traveler's check. They will put it on your passport and they will stamp it. That's what you are entitled to. Today, the Central Bank of Nigeria sells dollar to bureau de change, who are sitting on the fence, doing nothing, making profit on the hard-earned dollar that Nigeria managed to procure from export of crude oil, and the banks have moved away from their traditional banking corridor of now concentrating on trading in dollars. And the dollar trade is what the government has said, for all the gains you have made in trading in dollars, over the year, come and pay 50% or refund 50% to the federal government.
So an outright ban on these sorts of activities is what you're asking.
So what I'm saying is that the dollar should not be given to you and I physically in this country. It's a crime.
I want to be able to bring us back to the petroleum industry. For the Nigerian who's listening to this right now, there are two things on their minds. Is this going to reduce the cost of petrol, and is petrol going to be available? Is that simple?
The issue is this. The 450.
Is this going to?
It is not. I am saying it is not. Okay? If it will, tell me, show me how it will affect the sudden drop of petroleum price from what it has been to a lower figure. And what will it come to? The decision is known. There is 450 million barrels that is available to be sold. Okay? And it is now said it is starting from Dangote. Therefore, there is the imminent danger that the Port Harcourt refinery, the Warri refinery, when they come on stream and all have been going to one direction, pulling it back to meet these two become another challenge. Why you are not increasing your production. All right? Because the refinery in its own inception, 650 million barrels, is above what is being allotted right now. So there's going to be a gap. And what is the capacity of Port Harcourt refinery, of Warri refinery, to which billions have been committed for its renovation and operations?
Dr. Oni, just so, because we do have to wrap up, so availability and cost of petrol products for the Nigerian, is this policy helping at all? He says it's not. What do you think?
No, the policy won't necessarily drive down the price. I've said that unless government is going to give subsidy to Dangote or someone else via the NNPC, prices won't necessarily go down. In terms of availability, it goes to a number of other issues, like I stated. Are we going to be producing enough to be able to sell enough to Dangote? What's the volume we actually need in Nigeria? I think it will improve availability, but I'm not sure it will solve the problem completely. It will improve security of energy supply. Products should be more available, but unless we have sufficient production to be able to sell locally, remember there are forward sale agreements, not only by the NNPC, even the IOCs, the juniors, everyone is doing forward sale arrangements, right? Because many times it's even quite profitable for traders, the Trafalgarians of this world, and the other guys, Shell, Western Trading, all of these guys, it's profitable. So they've done many of these guys have done forward sale arrangements. It's whether we are able to encourage and have policies that allows us to produce more. If we do, then it then means that there'll be more sufficient quantities available for domestic use. Also because there's an obligation to reserve particular quantity for domestic sale. But in terms of pricing, I do not think it will do anything. Maybe very minute, not substantial change in pricing, unless we want to make crude a local commodity. It's an international commodity, and it's the international price that determines what you even pay locally, whether or not you pay it in USD or in your local currency. That's my view.
Well, I think this is a good place to.
No, I think there are points I wanted to make.
Just one. You have like 1 minute to go.
Yeah. Well, I think the biggest challenge that Nigerians have as a country is our inability to provide job for the jobless Nigerians. Job creation, and job creation is the key issue that will eliminate kidnapping, terrorism, and banditry. Because we have, army of unemployed youths that we have that is terrorizing this country. It is even worse than the banditry, those who have signed into banditry, kidnapping, and terrorism. And if government must solve that, today all the regions have now gotten their development commissions. What are they doing with this money that comes directly from the federal allocation to those commissions like the NDDC, the Northwest or Northeast Development Commission? They should have a target. Mr. President, tell them, please, you must provide 50,000 jobs or 100,000 jobs with this. Federal government should provide employment. Is it 1,000 jobs per state? State government, 500 jobs per state. Local government, even 20 or 30 commissions created. Look, I can tell you, this is an employment opportunity that was created by Senator Simon Lalong while he was the Minister for Labor and Employment. That will give employment to 500 unemployed graduates across the 36 states of Nigeria, including FCT. I think Mr. President should invite him at this period. Hey, Senator, Minister, you have a program that you left with Labour that was approved, ready for implementation. Within 30 days, you will absorb 18,500 unemployed graduates or 37 unemployed graduates across the country that will go into direct manufacturing, and they will be paid every month 150,000, and at the end of training, they will earn over 25 million naira each in 3 years.
Thank you, Prince Iweta. Prince David Iweta is the National Vice President of NACCIMA, and we do hope that government heard you there so that project is not lost. And Dr. Ayodele Oni joined us virtually. He's an energy law and policy professional. Thank you both for sharing your thoughts with us this morning. But we are running late to dash into the business studio where Ladi Williams is standing by, and I'm sure he'll still talk about the job creation bit and all that's going to happen with this sale of crude to Dangote. Ladi, over to you.